In hindsight, Orwell was the fortune teller, wasn't he? He predicted so many things that are happening today, pertinent to today, talking about issues like mass surveillance and power struggles in Soviet Russia. But today's topic is none of these. In fact, today he's going to bat for the English language. Yes, the language that we all love so much. And he sees a lot of problems with it. He lists a bunch of examples where the language is used to obfuscate the original intended meaning, sometimes nefariously, but more often than not, it has become such common parlance that using such metaphors and phrases essentially makes the reader not feel anything. Just to take an example, the Achilles heel one stayed with me. So if I had to give you an example, let's say I'm saying something and I mention the phrase Achilles heel in there. Let's say this is Superman's Achilles heel, let's say. So what am I doing there? I'm just saying two words that I'm assuming everyone knows the historical significance and meaning behind, and maybe some of them do, but I'm not conveying what I'm thinking. In fact, I didn't even put in the effort to look for words or ways to express myself that would fit the emotion better because this metaphor exists. I took a shorthand in using this metaphor, assuming that it would best convey the emotions that I'm trying to evoke in you. What that does is it homogenizes whatever everyone else is feeling into this one feeling. Again, parts of this are also in 1984, where words are dumbed down. Instead of using 10 different words for good, they are boiled down into plus good, plus good, something like that. So, uh, just a broader real life version of that is using metaphors. This is just one example. He gives so many other examples where the language is being misused in this way to nefariously hide the intended meaning, or maybe because the writer is not capable of or doesn't want to put in the effort of hunting for the right word, as he calls it. He just uses something that is convenient and loses the original intended meaning, if he ever had one to begin with. He also gives so many other examples. For example, using Latin words and Greek words instead of more recent, simpler words. This one word really irked me, and it still irks me when someone says clandestine, for example. Why would you use such a word when it just means something that is secret? There are probably a few bunch of other ways where you can express this particular emotion, that of something being top secret, confidential, for example, instead of using clandestine operation. Using such a complex word makes it seem pretentious. Maybe that is the goal. If I want to convey something that is simple, yet I want to make it appear as if it is profound, I will use big words from the dictionary, longer words, instead of saying something very simple like, I enjoyed the bread I ate today, I will say, the meal was scrumptious, something like that. Why would anyone do that? And yet, Orwell argues that that is what is happening to the English language today. And this is a direct result of the dumbing down of society. And that in this influence goes both ways, right? So the language influences thought. So using words like scrumptious, or again, he has many other examples in his essay. If you read that, so you will get more of them. But when people do that, you have homogenized the vividity of the original intended thought into these select few metaphors that then spread across the zeitgeist and again perpetuate it further instead of looking for new ways, more accurate ways of expressing yourself. So not only is the meaning lost, you lose the thought that you wanted to convey by even altering what other people understood from what you think. And this is not in the metaphysical sense of language as a tool to express your thoughts. That is one part of it, of course, but even within the language, there are different ways to do things that will convey what you mean more accurately. So instead of copying out and using something that everyone does, you can dig a bit deeper, search for more better ways to express yourself and do that instead of parroting something that has been repeated 1,000 times in political speeches and literary works that you have read. So very interesting things that I get to learn today. And again, I always, whenever I read Orwell, go back to being amazed at how amazing of a foresight this guy had. So for example, here's a quote that blew me away when I read it in this essay. Quote, the word fascism has now no meaning except in so far as it signifies something not desirable. End quote. In today's era, with Trump being called a fascist every single day, that again the right wing claims normalizes the word fascist, which is true. You are boiling down something as serious as fascism that again will lead to genocide, let's say. The consequences are immense. You boil that down to a commonplace word that everyone is using because they don't have either the balls or the vocabulary to look for something more accurate. He again later argues that there are many other words in the political realm itself, like democracy, where there is no single accepted definition, and politicians use these words to get to you. Today, everyone is using the word democracy as if it's a good thing, and everyone wants to be called a democracy, even though these countries vary in their values and their executive powers of their laws in so many different ways. Yet, everyone wants to be called a democracy because, let's say, it trickled down from American and British values that being democratic was good, which again might be true, but calling your country a Democratic Republic of Congo or calling Hungary a democracy does not make it the same as the democracy that is in the US or Mexico or Australia or whatever. I'm just saying that broadening your word or what it might mean only dumps you down further. Instead of using these euphemisms or something that is convenient, you have to take some time out, look at what you're saying, and go deeper, do better, basically. There are some other points that I noted down. He, yeah, very nicely points out that we use foreign words to make something sound cool. For example, cul-de-sac or coup, or I can think of pièce de résistance as a common one that is thrown every now and then. When I first encountered pièce de résistance, I obviously didn't know what it meant, and then I looked it up, and the meaning of it was so bland. I was expecting something magnanimous out of it. Well, it is French after all, and it has such a huge name, pièce de résistance, but it just means something like the main thing. That's it. That's the meaning. That's what you use this whole 10 syllables for, or whatever it is. So very interesting again that we use these words to sound pretentious or make ourselves appear smarter than we are, but in effect we are only dumbing ourselves and the reader down with all of this. So very interesting again. I also quickly wanted to point out that there are some other quotes that I wanted to include in this video. The first one being that, quote, all issues are political issues, end quote. And then again he continues later that politics itself is full of debauchery and such. But the point being that every single issue you face is political, right? I've always believed that. If you trace the roots of the problem back to its origin, there's always some part of it that is linked to politics or influence. Again, politics is a very broad term. Again, I'm falling into the trap that Orwell warned me against, because politics itself is a very broad spectrum. But all issues are political issues. Very interesting. Again, another quote that I wanted to mention here is that, quote, words like democracy, socialism, freedom, patriotic, realistic, justice have each of them several different meanings which cannot be reconciled with one another, end quote. How very interesting. What I mean by patriotic can be very different from what you mean by patriotic. Maybe for you, the meaning is someone who shows allegiance to his country in whatever the country does. Maybe for you, that is patriotism. In your mind again, but you'll be false because that is nationalism. But anyway, the point being that these words can mean different things to different people. So when you use these words in a frivolous manner, you again fall into the trap, as I just mentioned. So, very interesting that someone would take a very critical look at language and how it is shaping our thoughts up until today. I'm a huge fan of this guy called Etymology Nerd, right? You might have seen his shaky short videos on TikTok and YouTube Shorts. So this guy also does a lot of work in this area on how modern slang is completely changing language and how we adopt these words from 4chan and Reddit and make it into common parlance with words like riz, cap, and whatnot. I don't even want to go into that bucket right now, but point being that we are only dumbing ourselves down, and I have a vendetta against that for sure. I don't want to see a world where we devolve into making noises instead of expressing ourselves in a more articulate manner. So that's just what I'm trying to do. So I'm holding out against using Gen Z slang. Sorry. Okay, that was my quick review. I don't know how long this went for. Oh Jesus, more than 10 minutes. That's anyway. Thank you for listening. I don't want to drag this. Great essay. Go read it.